الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإلهكم إله واحد لا إله إلا هو الرحمن الرحيم إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار والفلك التي تجري في البحر بما ينفع الناس وما أنزل الله من السماء من ماء فأحيا به الأرض بعد موتها وبث فيها من كل دابة وتصريف الرياح والسحاب المسخر بين السماء والأرض لآيات لقوم يعقلون صدق الله العظيم. Respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, in continuation of ayat number 163, this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us, وَإِلَهُكُمْ إِلَهُ وَاحِدٌ, and your ilah, meaning the ilah of all of you, the ilah of the whole of creation. Ilahu wahid is one ilah. La ilaha illahu, there is no ilah but him. There is none worthy of worship except him. There is no ilah, no God but him. Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Coming to these sifat, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. These two sifat, we have gone over the details in Surah Al-Fatiha. But just briefly, that the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ar-Rahman, this is amongst the most comprehensive, the most beautiful name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Asma'ul Husna, the most beautiful names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have been told in a hadith in which Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam told us, Inna lillahi tis'an wa tis'ina isman. Definitely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala belongs 99 names. Mi'atan illa wahid, 100 minus 1. Man ahsaha dakhal al-jannah. Whosoever ahsaha, memorizes them, learns them, understands them, uses them, dakhal al-jannah, will enter into paradise. And this hadith is repeated in different versions in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim and Tirmidhi and a few other books of hadith. But in this hadith, the number 99 is emphasized in two different formats. And one, it is said clearly in the same hadith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has 99 names. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam again clarified, emphasized it by saying mi'atan illa wahid, 100 minus 1. To make it very clear that there are 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Asma'ul Husna. But these are not the only names that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. But these 99, they are enough that if somebody learns them, uses them, makes dua with them, so connects themselves with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through them, dakhal al-jannah, that person will enter into Jannah. Using them, we're told in the ayat of the Quran, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala belongs the Asma'ul Husna, the most beautiful names. Make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with them, or use them in your dua. فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. Amongst the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Asma'ul Husna, there are some names that are more comprehensive than others. There are some jami'a names that, if you break down their meaning, you realize that the meaning of majority of those 99 can be found within those names. For example, the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Hayyu Al-Qayyum, which is mentioned in Ayat Al-Kursi and in 2 other places in the Quran. In 3 places in the Quran, Al-Hayyu Al-Qayyum comes. So these 2 names, this combination of these 2 names in meaning, you can find that all of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be put into those 2 names, kind of like 2 categories. The same with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Dhul Jalali wal Ikram, the owner of majesty and the very majestic being, and the being that is very gracious and gives bounties. So again, one is the Zat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he is Dhul Jalal, very majestic. On the other side, he's also Al Ikram, very, very generous, and he gives bounties and bestows bounties. So that also you can have. So this is also a very comprehensive name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you have these names within the Asma'ul Husna that are very comprehensive. And many of these names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are comprehensive, you find in different ahadith where there is the indication that these may be the Ism al-A'zam, the greatest name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Coming to the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the 2 names, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. These are also very, very comprehensive in meaning. And their meaning is very comprehensive. On one side is the literal translation. In translation, we can understand only so much. But also the depth and meaning in their application, when you see within the application of the creation, it is something even beyond amazement. When you take the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ar-Rahman, and then you take the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ar-Rahim. So in meaning, Ar-Rahman is the most gracious, the most compassionate, that being that bestows favors out of his compassion, out of his mercy, out of his rahmah, out of his kindness, out of his love, he gives favors. On the other side, you have Ar-Rahim, that being that is very merciful. Coming to these 2 names, if you go back into the Arabic language, then Ar-Rahman, Sifat Mubaligha, and also coming from the Babi Fa'alan, which in Arabic, Fa'alan gives the meaning of something excessive or extreme. So when you have Rahmah, mercy, kindness, compassion, you take it to the extreme format in Arabic, you get Rahman. So Rahmah and then Rahman, the most extreme and excessive form of compassion. And it cannot be anything more than that. That is the most extreme way of expressing something in its extreme format. And every language has its own way of expressing this. In English, we generally express that in various ways. We have EST at the end of words. Somebody is hungry, somebody's hungriest. Somebody's thirsty, someone's thirstiest. Somebody's angry, somebody's angriest. Somebody's kind, someone is kindest. So in Arabic, you have fa'alan, somebody is compassionate and merciful, and someone has extreme level of compassion. It cannot be any more than that. The display of this name, again, to go a little bit into the depth of its meaning, we have many names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that show the format of the explanation of this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have Ar-Ra'uf, you have Al-Wadud, you have Al-Latif, multiple names. There are different variations of explanation of this name. But just to give you a simple explanation, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he speaks about this name, and this is also going back to the many secrets of Surah Ar-Rahman. This is the most beautiful name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala amongst the Asma'ul Husna when it comes to its even the pronunciation. This is the only name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you find in the Quran where one name is a whole ayah. You may find ayat in the Quran that the whole ayah will only be names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are ayat, for example, Allahu Samad. The whole ayah is 2 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Surah Fatiha, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. So you find names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you find ayat where there are multiple names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in one ayah. Alimul Ghaybi wa Shahadati al-Aziz al-Hakim is another ayah in the Quran. Inna Allah huwa ar-Razzaq dhul quwwati al-Mateen. So you'll find ayat and verses in the Quran where there are multiple names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in one ayah. But when you come to one ayah and one name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there's only one ayah in the Quran where the whole ayah is only one name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ar-Rahman. And it is the first ayah of Surah Ar-Rahman, which is also the name of the surah, Ar-Rahman. And then the details are given related to the kind of details of this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where the whole surah goes into details about the numerous favors and bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they're showing the expression of compassion and love that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created this whole creation. And He bestows His favors on this creation, whether the creation believes in Him or does not believe in Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His immense mercy, He continues to shower His blessings on creation. Especially in this context of this universe, of this world, and this worldly domain. There are many who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are many who do not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are many in the world who establish justice. There are many who are oppressors. Whatever condition, there are many who are righteous and there are many who are sinful. Whatever the condition someone may be in, when it comes to the bestowing of favors in this world, there's no exclusion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows His favors. And He gives His favors to whomsoever He wants. It has very little or anything to do with those who are believing in Him, those who may not believe, those who are just, or those who are oppressive. There's no distinction given in the bestowing of the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world. There are many who do not even believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or many who even oppose Him. And yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows His favors on them. So this is Ar-Rahman, that being when He bestows His favors, sometimes He gives without any measure, even to those who don't even believe in Him. When it comes to Ar-Rahim, this name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes from the Arabic, when you go back to the grammar, it comes from Fa'il Sigha. And the khususiyya of Fa'il, the particular meaning of the Fa'il, those words that are on Fa'il Sigha, is that they give a meaning of something continuous forever. For example, somebody like Alim, Rahim, Kareem, these names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they give the meaning of something continuous. When they're ascribed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it has an even more unique meaning, since ever, forever. Since ever, forever, when they're related to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ar-Rahim. Since ever and forever, the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. And this is a particular special rahmah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala generally has on the believers, bestowing His favors on them by rewarding them for their actions. In this world, man ja'a bil hasanati falahu ashru amthaliha. Whosoever does a good deed, it'll be multiplied tenfold. So this is the kind of standard from the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَنْ جَاءَ بِالسَّيِّئَةِ فَلَا يُجْزَى إِلَّا مِثْلَهَا. Whosoever commits a sin, there's only one sin written for them. So even in the ayat of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He shows His system of mercy. That He gives His mercy and His justice, that when someone does righteous deeds, He has set up a system to reward at least tenfold. And when you get to that, you also realize there's some actions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may multiply much more than that. وَاللَّهُ يُضَاعِفُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. For example, the system of sadaqah, so it is multiplied in the hundreds of times. So there are actions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His rahmah, out of His compassion, out of His mercy, He rewards much more. And again, this system of rahmah will continue not just in this world, but it is more particular to the akhirah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He'll bestow eternal bliss in the form of Jannah, paradise for the believers. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala admit all of us into paradise, into Jannah. So that'll be for the believers for eternity, and that is what is also Ar-Rahim, that being that will give eternal mercy and bliss. So this is the two sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentioned in this ayah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. These two names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're also very blessed names. They're known as amongst the names of blessings, having barakah. And this is evident from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and it is in relation to the basmala, saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This basmala, it is a statement of barakah and blessings. That Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam told us regarding the basmala, كل أمر ذي وال من لم يبدأ بسم الله فهو أقطع. That whosoever, if there's any important matter that is not started with Bismillah, so that work or that matter is cut off, meaning it is cut off from blessings or it is incomplete. So as believers, we should always start anything and everything with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, or with Bismillah. This comes at the beginning of 113 surahs, and it is repeated in Surah An-Naml twice, regarding the letter that Sulaiman alayhi salam, when he wrote a letter, he wrote Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim in that letter. So that letter is also mentioned in the ayat of Surah An-Naml. So these two names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are also blessed names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, containing many barakat and blessings. So this is from just ayat number 163, and again, the details of Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. To really get a notion of Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in ayat number 164. And that is the kind of rabat and connection between ayat number 164 and 163. But in ayat number 164, which is the next ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes into the details of the sense of uluhiyya and also Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, the numerous bounties and favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also the system of the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one ilah. Ayat number 164, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states for us multiple ayat, multiple signs, and these are ayat-i kuniyya, the ayat in the kainat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the universal system and universal domain of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When it comes to ayat, which comes at the ending of this verse, ayat number 164 also, ayatin liqawmi ya'qilun, and all of this, there are signs for those who have aql and intellect. Ayat, this term, this statement has multiple meanings in the verses of the Quran. One meaning is that it comes with the meaning of the verses of the Quran itself. Tilka ayatul kitabil mubin. These are the verses, the ayat of a book that is very clear. And this is mentioned in many, many places in the Quran. Tilka ayatul kitabil hakim, tilka ayatul kitabil mubin. So these are ayat and verses of a book that is full of wisdom. These are ayat and verses of a book that is very clear. This is one meaning of ayat, it means verses, the ayat of the Quran itself. Those are known as ayat Qur'aniyya, the verses of the Quran. The second meaning of ayat is that it comes with the meaning of ayat kuniyya, the ayat of the kainat, the universal domain of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ard wa ikhtilafil layli wal nahar لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ in Surah Al-Imran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us regarding the creation of the heavens and the earth, the alteration of night and day, that these are ayat for those who have intellect. Also in this verse 164, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions many, many ayat of the universal domain and universal system. And you'll find this throughout the Quran, where some universal phenomena is mentioned, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the term ayat. Then a third meaning of this term ayat is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses it when there were miracles performed either by the prophets or miracles performed on the prophets. For example, Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, so he was given multiple miracles, that his staff was turned into a snake. His hand, Yad Bayda, used to put his right hand in his side, and when he would take it out, he used to shine. And it was a different kind of shining, a very, very unique and splendid, beautiful light. And there were other ayat that were given to Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, other miracles as well. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to that also in the Quran, ayatim bayyinat, very clear evidence, signs. Now these were signs and miracles. Regarding another miracle that is also mentioned in the Quran is the case of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. When his qawm and his nation tried to burn him. And when they tried to burn him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him. قُلْنَا يَا نَارُ كُونِي بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا عَلَىٰ إِبْرَاهِيمَ. The verses are mentioned in Surah Al-Anbiya that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. And also this is repeated in Surah Al-Ankabut. And in Surah Al-Ankabut, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the people, they made a statement, أُقْتُلُوهَا وَحَرِّقُوهُ فَأَنْجَاهُ اللَّهُ مِنَ النَّارِ. The people made a statement that we will kill Ibrahim alayhi salam, or that they will burn Ibrahim alayhi salam. And they did this because Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, he proved to them the useless nature of the idols they were worshipping. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, فَأَنْجَاهُ اللَّهُ مِنَ النَّارِ. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him from that fire. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يُؤْمِنُونَ. In that was definitely many signs and ayat for those who have belief and really believe. So again, the term ayat comes. This is a sign of the miracles, and this is mentioned in many other places in the Quran as well. So this is also one of the meanings of the word ayat, is the miracles of the prophets. In some places in the Quran also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a reference to some of the punishments that came against the nations of the past. And in particular places in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the term ayat also. That this was also a sign for the believers that they may take a lesson from it. Those are known as ayat ibrah, those ayat that are a warning and a kind of lesson for the believers to take a ibrah from it, to take a lesson from it. And those are also mentioned in quite a few places in the Quran when the nations of the past are mentioned. And the Anbiya alayhim as-salam was also mentioned. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, particularly in Surah Ash-Shu'ara, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this quite a few times. That this is also ayat, verses. And it's mentioned at the end of some of the stories of the prophets that come. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَةً وَمَا كَانَ أَكْثَرُهُم مُؤْمِنِينَ وَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الرَّحِيمُ. So in that was a sign, but majority of them don't believe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while mentioning the nations of the past, He mentions the story of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam is mentioned, and Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam is mentioned, Nuh alayhi salam is mentioned, Hud alayhi salam is mentioned, Salih alayhi salam is mentioned, Shu'aib alayhi salam is mentioned, and also Lut alayhi salam is mentioned. There's a list of many, many nations mentioned. At the ending of every single one of these stories, you find this statement, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَةً وَمَا كَانَ أَكْثَرُهُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Definitely in that, meaning in that story, there's a sign. The majority of them do not believe. وَمَا كَانَ أَكْثَرُهُم مُؤْمِنِينَ وَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الرَّحِيمُ. Majority of them do not believe, and definitely your Rabb has unlimited might and power, and He is very merciful. So these are just some of the meanings of ayah. Here, ayat number 164. We find the ayat ikuniya, or the ayat of kainat, where there are the signs mentioned within the kainat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In another ayah in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ. Very soon we will show them signs in the horizons. So there are so many signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in this ayah, ayat number 164. What is unique about ayat number 164 is that there is a detailed description of some of the favors of Ar-Rahman. That is the unique miracle of the Quran, that sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will mention some of His names, and then He'll give a detailed description, kind of giving the explanation of the meaning of that name. And sometimes it is done the other way. You'll find a description, detailed description, and after a detailed description is given, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will mention one of His names. So here, ayat number 163, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, first and foremost, that He is Ilah, the one and only Ilah. But here also Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. To understand, to give a deeper meaning of Ar-Rahman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us signs. Some of these signs, there are a few categories in this ayah, ayat number 164. We'll just kind of briefly go over the categories and we'll see how much detail we can give. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ard. Inna fi, definitely in, khalqis samawati wal ard, the creation of the heavens and the earth. We were not there to witness creation of heavens and the earth. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, here he is mentioning that not in the heavens and the earth, but in the creation of the heavens and the earth. There's one thing that is unique in particular about the heavens and the earth. We as human beings, for us, this is space. Space only consists of two things. Either we're on this earth, all the different parts of this earth, the top of the mountain, the land, the sea, the forest, the bottom of the ocean, wherever it might be, that's this earth. It is space. Or you go into what is called outer space, the universal system. So in the creation of the heavens and the earth, what was created? Space was created. This is one. So talking about space, one ayah, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, meaning in space. وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ, in the alteration of night and day. Not in the night and day. What about the night and day? The alteration of night and day. What is a unique aspect of the alteration of night and day? Time. All time that we may know, whether we're using seconds, minutes, hours, whatever system we're using. There was a time where people used to follow the sun, they used to follow the moon. There's different times, different clocks. We came up with the system of the seconds, minutes, and hours. But there were systems of time even before us, before this system of minutes and seconds was invented. Time has always been there. But one unique aspect of time is that time existed in two formats. You have day, you have night. And generally the seasons of the world were also calculated with the length of day or the length of the night. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used here in this ayah, ayat number 164, and in other ayat in the Quran also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word وَاخْتِلَافِ فِي اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ, in the ikhtilaf, in the alteration of night and day. What is the alteration of night and day? It is time. So if you kind of rephrase this part of the ayah, the first part of this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that in the signs of space and time, space has heavens and earth, and time has day and night. For us human beings, time is day and night. The day and night is not everywhere in the universe. You go into the outer universe, you go into the heavens, there is no night and day. Which means the system of time will be very different once you get out of this world. It's also the miracle of the Quran. How could somebody have known 1400 years ago, once you get out of this world, time is different, or time works differently. So this is proof that the Quran is kalamullah, the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about our relevance so that we may understand that one is space, one is time. Space is heavens and the earth. In the creation of the heavens and the earth, space was created. And in the alteration of night and day, we can calculate time. إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes to the next phrase. وَالْفُلْكِ الَّتِي تَجْرِي فِي الْبَحْرِ بِمَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسِ. This is the sign Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us. وَالْفُلْكِ, and by the ships, الَّتِي تَجْرِي فِي الْبَحْرِ, which are running in the oceans, بِمَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسِ, in order to benefit human beings. Movement through space and time. As human beings, we move. Anytime we're moving in some time, and we're moving in space. We occupy space, and we also occupy time. Right now we're having this discussion. This reminder is going on. This tadhkirah is going on. And this is happening at a particular time. It's also happening over this video system, occupying space, memory space, if you want to go into those details. But it's also occupying also physical space. I'm sitting in a physical space. So we occupy space, we occupy time. Look at the eloquent nature of the Quran. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned space and time. And then He mentioned one unique element that occupies both space and time. The movement of ships in the ocean for the benefit of mankind. Why are ships mentioned? Versus so many other things that could have been mentioned. Why is ships mentioned? There's a lot of details to this particular statement. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned ships. We'll come back to the tafsir of this. Coming to the next part. So we have space, you have time, you have movement through space and time. And that movement through space and time is always benefit for human beings. This is where that famous phrase also comes. Al-baraka fil haraka, that there's barakah, there's blessings in movement. Never become stagnant. Always look for progress. If you become stagnant, then that progress, even whatever progress you have made, will diminish. So al-fulk allati tajri fil bahri bima yanfa'u an-nas. And movement we can also control. Again, coming to the next part of the ayah. وَمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مِن مَّاءٍ فَأَحْيَا بِهِ الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down from the sky in the form of water, with that water Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives life to the earth. With movement, something is also needed. Because there are many things that we can do and we think we're progressing. Everybody's working towards something. Many people are working and they don't get any results. So results come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's an ingredient in movement that is required in order to make that movement beneficial. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turns our attention to something we don't control. And that is the rain, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down the rain. And what is the effect of that rain? فَأَحْيَا بِهِ الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then gives life to the earth after it is dead. So there are many factors in this world that are not in our control. And these factors that are not in our control, they are the factors that are required for our development. So we've gone through 4 signs: space, time, the movement through space and time, and then the factors that will make that movement beneficial or useful. Otherwise, many people move. There's some people who work very hard, and in the end, they don't get anything. Why? Because the element of barakah, blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not. And again, we'll go into those details, how all of these signs are connected. وَبَثَّ فِيهَا مِن كُلِّ دَابَّةٍ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives life to the earth, He has scattered in this earth dabba, many creatures. And the nature of many of these creatures is that they're migratory. They migrate. Parts of the world, they get blessings. Time comes where that dies, the seasons change. That part of the earth is dying, another part of the world is getting a life. So all these animals that were living and benefiting from one part of the earth, now they know that it is time to migrate and go to the other part of the earth. And this migration is happening. You have the herbivores, they're always looking for the herbs. So wherever the earth is green and changing, so they're moving with that. And then you have the carnivores, you have those animals that eat the herbivores. So they're also following, they're also migrating and moving around. Again, going back to the system of movement. And we'll come back to this in great detail. وَبَثَّ فِيهَا مِن كُلِّ دَابَّةٍ وَتَصْرِيفِ الرِّيَاحِ وَالسَّحَابِ الْمُسَخَّرِ بَيْنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And in the blowing of the winds, and in the suspension of the clouds between the sky and the earth. That is amazing that it is mentioned in this order. What is even more amazing is that the rain has been separated from the clouds and the wind, even though we know that rain comes from the clouds and the clouds move with the winds. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned rain 2 signs before. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning these winds that move the clouds. There's a very, very great lesson in that as well. Many a times we think we are doing, but there are many, many, many factors, many factors, that without those factors, we would be nothing. Just like the heavy clouds, one cloud, how many hundreds of tons of water one cloud can have. And with the wind that is so light, and it can push this heavy cloud and take it where? Very, very great sign in that as well. Sometimes these clouds travel continents. They travel across a whole continent. With what? Wind. And very, very light wind. It doesn't take very heavy wind. Very light wind. And it's moving this very, very, very heavy cloud. Very, very deep lesson in this as well. Sometimes we think we are doing. Sometimes we think we have something so strong. We don't even realize the things we have established, what is needed to keep this going is not extreme effort. Once it is established, it doesn't take much to keep it going. That consistency, istiqamah, is very, very important. Again, we'll come back to this sign. So in all of this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. There are many signs, many ayat, لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ, for nations that have aql and intellect. And what a beautiful, eloquent way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the system that we all think about and we haven't even realized. There are many, many secrets within this system as well. So just to kind of quickly recap, you have space, you have time, you have movement between space and time, which is the ships that move for the benefit of mankind. If you want benefit, you have to move. You have to be ready to take risks. And then you have the rain, which is not in our control, which is blessings and help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And with that, the earth comes to life, which means many things will come to fruition only by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we have to seek His help. Then with that, the animals, the creatures, they move. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala scattered how many animals in the world, and there's also a very, very great sign that people will go where there is life, just like animals will go where there is life. So also when we have projects and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts barakah in them, then people will come. And there's a very, very great details in relation to that once we get there. So again, the scattering of the creatures throughout the world and the winds that carry the heavy clouds, which is the efforts that can move mass, or that can have very, very massive impact on great movements. In a very, very beautiful and simple way, in a very, very deep manner, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this, ayat, the signs, liqawmi ya'qilun, for people who have aql and intellect, that they may be able to extract the message within this ayah. It's kind of a detailed description in a very simplified way. So the most eloquent means of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is explaining, one sifa ar-Rahman, the systems of this universal domain. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and give all of us the tawfiq to practice His deen. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغَ.